Folks, Marcus here from the Ashland Fly Shop. We're back at the Vise. Been a little while since we tied a fly. It's rumored that there are summer steelhead poking around, so we're going to tie a summer steelhead fly. And what it'll be today, it's basically just Harry Lemire's steelhead caddis. Little tweaks here and there with some modern materials that I like to use, but the concept is pretty much the same there, so we're going to just do a little variation on that fly. So today I'm using the TMC 2302, which is a standard wire hook. I think on our rivers, Rogue, Klamath, standard wires usually going to be just fine. If you're going to tie this fly to go to BC or the Deschutes, you'll probably want a 2X heavy, like a 3761 or something like that. But I don't mind the wire on this hook, and I kind of like the little arch that it has. So I'll start right up at the top, and today I'm using Vise 50D gel spun thread, which I pretty much use this and the 30D exclusively nowadays. So I'm going to come back just to the point of the hook there. And I'm going to tie in a little tail material. It's not, you don't need it, I don't think, but I kind of like having a little tail on this fly, and I'm using the brown nymph India henback. So I'll just pull a lot of the fuzz and fluff away, and I'll just grab, just a little clump, kind of straighten it out, and I'm just gonna gauge my tail somewhere close to half the length of the shank. Then I'll just trap all these ends here. Secure everything in there. And then I'm going to use a little, you can use ultra wire or Danville's fine gold wire, but this is going to rib my body material. And if you're using ultra wire, I'd just say use small or brassy would work just fine. Just something small. Don't need big old ribs in here. The body material, I just like to use a few strands of Flashabou, and I've been using this speckled copper. I think this is one of the cooler colors offered in the Flashabou lineup. So I'll clip a few strands. I'm gonna straighten out those ends a little bit. Trap them under my thread towards the back and pull them a little bit. And then start to wrap up. Just trying to trap all those little guys. And then I might, as I'm wrapping, kind of turn the hook, make sure that thread isn't showing through in any direction. Just make sure you're getting good full coverage all the way around that thread. I'll tie that stuff off. If you wanted some longer flash through the fly, you could just leave a few strands coming over the back. I don't think that would hurt at all. But we're going to tie in some other flash in here. So I just kind of palmered that wire straight over the Flashabou, and I'm going to make just a little baby dubbing loop. And I'm going to do a little dub ball. It's not super essential in the fly, but I think it kind of props up a lot of what's going on. And I've got ice dub in the pheasant tail color to do that. And you could just wrap it straight on the thread, but I really like using the dubbing loop. It just seems that when you pick it out, it just all picks out a lot more nicely in the loop. I'm going to wrap back a little bit to give myself some room around this head. And kind of fold back some of those fibers. Just gonna give it an extra little brush. Really like on these traditionals to have some movement in that dubbing ball. Just kind of fills out the body of the fly a little bit. And then I do a little collar of UV polar chenille in the copper color. And we're really only looking for a wrap or two of this stuff. Lace or whatever it's called. Need to get that stuff. All right, so I've got this polar chenille tied in. I'll just come around once, maybe just under 2 times. I don't like really flashy flies. I'll clip that guy off. And you could trim that up if you wanted to. I kind of like how it looks all ratty, crazy looking. All right. So now that I've got a little flash in there, I'm going to use the India hemback again, and this is where this gets to this kind of steelhead caddis design. Obviously, there's a little bit more going on in this pattern, but the original one is known for having this split India hemback wing, and you can use a number of different feathers for that, but I think this one looks pretty dang good. So I kind of just line up the tips and peel away a lot of that fluff at the bottom of the fly, bottom of the feather. And I typically do my near side first. You can see in these that they want to bend into each other. So I just take those and I put that curve going towards the center of the fly. So that they're both just coming out the side of the fly. I'm going to trim some of that flash. It's just a little unwieldy. Tame it. Try and trim with a little taper when I do it. So on the last one I tied, I did, this is just a natural hemback, just basically a soft hackle patch. I did do a little collar in here on the last one that I tied, and I like the way it turned out. So I'm going to throw a little collar on this one too. Get that tied in there. I've got a good amount of working distance for the head here, which is essentially a muddler head. And what you'll see is you can leave yourself however much room you want for this head. You could leave yourself just a little patch. If you wanted a really small one, I've left myself some room because I'm gonna get a fair amount of hair in here. So I'm just gonna start a dubbing loop. And this is the pattern, first one I ever learned to spin hair, which now I just think is the coolest thing. With this Vise thread, you definitely need some dubbing wax to spin hair with, because it's just so thick that it won't grab those hairs unless you got some wax. So I waxed up both sides of the thread, and I'm just gonna hang that loop there. And then I've got moose body hair. You could also use moose mane. You could use a couple different types of hair. I like moose body hair, especially if you can find some that's kind of stiff, which this stuff is. And I just tend to split it with my scissor and get a little clump that I want to work with and kind of bend that clump back. And then I'm just gonna trim it out of there. With this stuff, as with all hair, it's pretty important to clean it up. I just have a little comb. Any comb will do. And then you want to line up how much hair you want sticking through the fly. So I'm going to end up switching hands with this and not tie in the full amount. I'm just going to grab it right there, trim it up. And this spinning technique, I've really noticed the first thing I do after I trim is I kind of roll my fingers and split some of that up. And then I just continue to work it in my hands, splitting it up a little bit. You can do a lot of that in the loop too, but it really helps getting those fibers not to be next to each other in a clump like this. Like right now they're all clumped out, so we need to spread those up. And you'll notice when I did it that I did not stack the hair. And in this pattern, I really like not stacking the hair. I think that it gives it a nice natural taper when those ends are coming out kind of frayed at different lengths. So I just give my twister a couple spins, and I get to where it's just about to start wrapping, and right when it's about to wrap, I'm going to grab all this hair and actually fold it back. And right as it's about to lay down, I just fold it back so that it's like a little hackle almost that you're laying on there. And you can see that this technique does take up some space. So that's why I left myself that extra room on the head, probably more than I would on a standard muddler. And depending on how it wraps, you might not do any trimming afterwards. If it were me, as I have done in the last couple weeks, I would leave a couple like this and then trim some other ones. And I think that look is just a really buggy, cool look. So you could finish this fly right up, but I'll show you how to trim it. Trims the exact same way as a muddler does, really. Just gonna clear a little room and give myself a little thread head at the top there. And then come in, give it a whip finish. trimming, since I'm a lefty, I'm actually just going to flip my vise. And I just come right at the top of that fly. And as you clip, because what you've got here is we spun, so all the way through the head you've got short hairs and long hairs kicking through there. So if you trim the first part away, you're just left with what's like a muddler head. And I like these to be somewhere in between a muddler and, you know, whatever. Just kind of has a buggy look if you leave that head a little bit less trimmed than a muddler. I'm going to come in and just glue up that head. Just a little touch. And then I'll hit it with the UV. So this is a really old fly. I'm sure there's a number of you that know the history of this fly quite a bit better than I do. But I came up on it during the lockdown. I had a couple flies that I had found that were custom tied when I was in British Columbia last fall, and one of them was a little steelhead caddis, old Lemire style fly, and it really kind of set me off on a trajectory of trying to learn the technique of spinning that hair and playing around with the wings on these flies. And really, you know, a dry line or a sink tip, you could hitch it if you wanted it to skate. I just fished mine on a dry line and let them do whatever they're gonna do, whether it's on the surface or just underneath. But this is a really cool little bug, and for steelhead fishing here from now for the next 2 months, and then, you know, the Klamath in the fall, Deschutes fish I'm sure might like this, although I could see someone doing this with a little more purple in it for the Deschutes. But that's my variation on the steelhead caddis. I hope you enjoyed it.